When I started doing this work, I had this idea of an elder is somebody who's figured it out, how to live. But actually, when you start hearing the stories, it's more about a person who has learned to process the mistakes that we make, and to create a language where you can pass something down to other generations so that the same mistakes are not repeated. You make those mistakes count, and you do that with grace, and you do that with humility, and that's a generous act as well. It cannot be just about us. It has to be about our responsibility to the time when we are no longer here. And it cannot be a choice either. It has to be something visceral. You just need to do what is right, even if it goes against your self-interest, even if it makes you look ridiculous and pathetic, even if it costs you a lot, you will do it.
Welcome to this week's Timeless. We know that our conversations are vast and deep, and that we are in this time of the age of information and attention. Each of our epic podcast episodes are filled with so much wisdom and new ways of seeing. And in this culture, there is a propensity to make more and more and more and more and post it everywhere. And it's exhausting. We want to contribute to a culture of meaning, care, and presence. And we know that wisdom is timeless. We hope that you enjoy this short episode. As always, if you find what we offer here at All That We Are supportive to your soul, please dive deeper with us. You can find out on our website how to join the Beautiful Leadership Mentoring, Reclaim Your Intuition, and Presence Collective. I am also offering 3 one-to-one sessions over the next 6 weeks if you want to integrate some trauma patterns and plant some new seeds of being as we end this year and begin the next. You can find the link for that in the show notes. Please do support our other courses and membership, as this is how we make this podcast, and anything that we receive from those spaces allows us to continue this work and to feed our families. This week's Timeless is from our archives, part of a beautiful and powerful conversation we had in episode 156 with Vanessa Andreotti on radical tenderness, eldership, and decolonization, entitled Embracing Our Pain. You are so welcome to go and find this episode in the archives and listen to it in full. We hope that hearing just this small part will give you the space to contemplate, integrate, and embody what you hear. Vanessa Andreotti is a Brazilian educator and indigenous and land rights activist. She is the Dean of the Faculty of Education at the University of Victoria and holds a Canada Research Chair in Race, Inequalities and Global Change at the Department of Educational Studies, University of British Columbia. She is also the author of the book Hospicing Modernity. Her teaching and research focus on analysis of historical and systemic patterns of reproduction and knowledge and inequalities, and how these limit or enable possibilities for collective existence. Vanessa is one of the founders of the Gesturing Towards Decolonial Futures Arts Research Collective and Teia das 5 Curas network of indigenous communities in Brazil. This Timeless explores the question, how to become a good elder and ancestor. We hope that this moves you, inspires you, and gives you something that you can really bring into being in your life and this world right now. Welcome to All That We Are, with me, your host, Amisha Tala Oak. On this show, we explore the weave between activism, the sacred, creativity, and regeneration, the spaces where our inner and outer worlds dance. From healing trauma to nature connection, to new technologies, to ancient wisdom, it's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a more beautiful future. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to listen, to ask ourselves the big questions and to share what we are already doing and envisioning. We create the futures of our wildest dreams, and we begin to embody all that we are becoming, and all that is possible.
What does it mean to die? Well, we are yet to figure that one out collectively, right? As we outgrow the limitations of the dominant culture. So it may mean something very different for communities that have lived in a way that not manifesting the level of separability from the land that we manifest in current consumerist metropolitan cultures. So this is something for us to figure out. But as we figure that out, we have to figure out how to age well too, and how to how to deal with time differently, how to see time also in multiple layers, and see our temporality and this inhabiting of an organic body very differently, how to relate to our unconscious very differently. Part of this is to shift our relationship with pain. So again, in dominant society, we are told that we can only be well if we are pain free in the space, and then we imagine that space too as a space of bliss or a space of elation. But there are many different ways of feeling well where you can hold the hand of pain and be with it and befriend it. And of course, pain has many different roles. One of them is as a teacher. It's also an alert system in your body, right? That's something you need to pay attention to something. Many people say that we're always in a lot of pain, like our guts are in pain and our backs are in pain, but we numb it. And when you do massage, it's the releasing of that sensation that comes out. It's not that it's the pressure that is causing the pain, but it's the release of that pain. So part of dying well, I think, has to do with time, then has to do with how to become elders, how in dominant culture, eldership is not something that is talked even about. If you age, you're losing value within society because the value is all placed upon youth or production. But there is something about eldership there that needs to change. So it's aging, time, and how we hold pain and also mistakes too. When I started doing this work, I had this idea that of an elder is somebody who's figured it out, how to live. But actually, when you start hearing the stories, it's more about a person who has learned to process the mistakes that we make, and to create a language where you can pass something down to other generations so that the same mistakes are not repeated. You make those mistakes count, and you do that with grace, and you do that with humility, and that's a generous act as well. And that's actually, it's part of your responsibility to do it. And once we lose those stories too, right, or that kind of conversation, or when we don't have the time anymore because we think that there's nothing to be offered, or when the elders themselves or people who age lose the capacity to do the processing too, and only see aging as a degenerative process, that there's a short circuit in this, and we are all shortchanged because then there's no pathway for maturity. And the sadness that comes with it, with this devaluation of your being, of your body, of your, once you're no longer productive, right? Then there's no other role that you can play, because this conceptualization of wisdom and the responsibility of the wisdom over your mistakes is no longer legitimized or acknowledged as important. And also the lack of a pathway, right? So there is a story that we use a lot with young people in our collective too, that was told by a Cree elder, John Cryer. The response that we have from young people is that this is a very important story to dance with because of a lack of a similar story in dominant culture. So it's a story of the four mountains. And it is basically a pathway to aging that comes through a metaphor. So the first mountain is the baby mountain, where you are received in the arms of your community to the world on one side of the mountain, and you're carried to the top of this mountain. And as you come down this mountain, you are gifted to your real parents, who are the land and the sky. So you are taking your first steps on the land as you go down the baby mountain, holding the hand of people from your family, from your community. But it's very important that your feet touches the ground and knows that ground, has intimacy with the ground. And that is your first teacher. And that is your mother, right? That's Pachamama, our Mother Earth. So as you change to the second mountain and you start going up the second mountain, the second mountain is the warrior mountain. And it could be, that could be a relationship with adolescence, but many of these cultures don't have a distinction. It's either you're a child and or an adult. There's most of them don't have the teenager as a figure, but I think there is resonance there with the warrior mountain. So in the warrior mountain, you were sent to a dark forest where the trees know who you are, but you don't. And you are curious to see what medicine you bring to the world. But then you start fighting the shadows of the trees because you want to know on your terms. And the trees, they trick you because you need to figure out to find your medicine on your own, but not on your terms, which is interesting. It's allowing the world to teach you. You need that humility as well. And as you reach the top of this mountain, you've learned like this medicine that you bring to the world. And as you go down the mountain, you are developing intimacy with that. You're cooking your medicine. It is for you first, and you need to know it intimately because it's both a medicine and a poison. You need to be very close to it and very familiar to it. The next mountain is the mountain of the provider or the hunter, where you're going to learn to offer this medicine to the world. First to the people just immediately around you, and then on the other side of the mountain to more people. You learn to integrate this medicine with other medicines, which also means learning when to offer, when not to offer, when it's medicine, when it is poisonous, learning the amount that you need to offer at any time, learning to, again, to integrate it with other medicines. And then the last mountain is the mountain, the Elder Mountain. As you start to walk towards this mountain, you have to pass through the other three mountains, especially the transition from the baby mountain to the warrior mountain, to the warrior mountain, to the provider mountain. And you become the person, as you walk towards the Elder Mountain, who support people to turn from one mountain to another. These are the rites of passage that we also miss in our dominant culture. And then you will see that the Elder Mountain is right behind the baby mountain, and they are connected. And there's where we learn that the babies need the elders because the warriors don't have the patience and the hunters don't have the time to be able to hold this baby as this baby needs to be held. The story is that as you go up the mountain, this Elder Mountain, at one point, midway, you need to shed your body. And as you shed your body to be able to keep going and crossing towards another side, the moment you shed your body, you realize you were never alone in this. Both the land, the other animals, the plants, and all your relatives were with you in this endeavor and trying to talk to you all the time. And you were learning how to distinguish between your own voices and the voices that you were receiving, both good and bad. Like it's not just this harmonious thing. There's also conflict there, but you're distinguishing how to understand and receive these different languages. And at that point too, you realize that the point of life and death is to prepare people to become good elders and good ancestors for all relations. So we took the story. The story was part of a project of Kesha Henneque, who's also an indigenous scholar, who was asking people, like, what is the point of education, right? He went around, and John Cryer was one of the people that was part of this project, and he talked to many different elders in sacred sites, and nobody in any of this this conversation said the point of education is to have you productive in the dominant culture. The point of education was always along the lines of you need to prepare babies since they are born. You look at the baby and you already imagine the baby as an elder. And you see your responsibility in terms of this being as supporting this person to develop their medicine, to be able to become a good elder and ancestor for all relations. Maybe that's part of learning how to die. As the current culture fails more and more in offering us the possibility of a well-lived life and a well-died death, the cracks that start to appear, the cracks are where the stories can dance, right? When people are satisfied with the dominant culture, they're satisfied with the dominant culture. There's not much we can do. It's when this dominant culture can no longer hold the promises it makes. We go into a process of, okay, this culture doesn't hold the promise it makes. We need somebody to fix that. So you have a lot of people now, as we see the shaking, looking for strong leaders who will fix it and bring it back to the security and safety and comfort and entitlements and securities that people were expecting, right? So there's one way of thinking about it, and I think a lot of people will think about it that way. The other way is to say the promises of the dominant culture were unrealistic in the first place, but also sourced through violence. They were unsustainable and violent. And when you sit with that, it's really hard. And that's part of the composting of the shit. Like, how do we get disillusioned in a generative way? Because disillusionment should be a good thing. You're removing an illusion. But people tend to see disillusionment as something extremely painful, and it is painful, an undoing of the self and undoing of the world. But if you see that as an opportunity to actually find these cracks and these other stories that can then reactivate capacities that have been exiled by the dominant culture, in ways of being and ways of well-being that have been exiled by the current culture. And it doesn't happen like as a complete download. Now I know how to do it and off I go into the crack. No, it's slow. And all this undoing and this disillusionment, it takes some time for you to be in a position where you're not consuming these other stories to feel a little bit better. Although in the beginning you do consume, because we're conditioned to consume everything. The stories are there to dance with you, not necessarily to be consumed. Most people will consume them first because that's what we're conditioned to do. We're conditioned to consume not only stuff, but also knowledge, critique, stories, experiences, relationships. And it takes some time for us to become dissatisfied with the consumption. And then we can start to interrupt it. And in this interruption, we open up the possibility of another form of relationship that is not a projective one or a transactional one. It's one that you allow, for example, the story to dance with you and to teach you on the story's terms rather than wanting to learn on your terms. It's a process of growing up by growing down and becoming an elder as we learn to sit with all aspects of reality, the good, the bad, the ugly, the broken, and the messed up or the fucked up, and not turning away from that. And then it's only by sitting with all of this that we will be able to develop discernment about what do we want to feed, what we need to interrupt and contain. But it cannot be just about us. It has to be about our responsibility to the time when we are no longer here. And it cannot be a choice either. It has to be something visceral. So this is one thing that they keep saying to us in the ceremonies down in the South, is that if responsibility is a choice, an intellectual choice, or a matter of convenience, it's not responsibility really. The responsibility they are talking about, even neurobiologically, it's a kind of, think about a neurochemical that comes, is overpowering. You just need to do what is right, even if it goes against your self-interest, even if it makes you look ridiculous and pathetic, even if it costs you a lot, you will do it.
Thank you for listening. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode and it has sparked some inspiration and creativity in you. This is one of our timeless editions, a short and powerful piece of wisdom for you to contemplate, integrate, and embody. We have an archive of over 200 epics, long, deep conversations for you to explore, share, and enjoy. We keep this podcast advertising free as we don't want to sell you things that you don't need. This is made possible by you supporting our work as a member of Presence Collective, a patron, or through joining our offerings. You can also support us by sharing this with those that you love. Can you send it to 10 people who you know will find it powerful? This podcast is made by an all-female global team. You can explore our world at allthatweare.org and find your ways to take part. All That We Are celebrates all that we are already and the untapped potential that lives inside us. We exist to offer a space of sanctuary in the ever-increasing chaos, a place where you can come and be in good company, a place where you can learn, unlearn, and connect to your own wisdom. And know that in each and every moment, all that we are is here.